Four friends camp beside a silent lake hidden deep in gray pine forest, hoping for adventure. But as night falls, whispers rise from the water, calling each of them by name. Shadows close in, belongings vanish, and they slowly realize the lake has plans of its own, a dark force that draws them closer, one by one, leaving only a question behind. Who will be the last to hear the lake's final, chilling whisper? The road to Gray Pine. The plan started as a joke. "Let's get off the grid for a weekend," Logan had said, grinning as he tossed the camping guidebook onto the table in our cluttered apartment. No phones, no noise, just us and nature. It'll be a nice reset. Looking back, none of us remembered whose idea it was to pick Gray Pine Forest. The online reviews were few, and the photos we could find were strangely out of focus, as if something was wrong with every camera brought there. Yet that only added to the intrigue. So, four friends, Logan, Ryan, Jamie, and I, Ethan, piled into Logan's truck at dawn on a Saturday and set off, each of us craving an adventure away from the hum of city life. The 4-hour drive was setting up camp. The first night was uneventful, if you don't count the strange feeling that hung in the air, the sense of being watched. We dismissed it as nerves, the kind you get when your mind has too much silence to wander into. We spent the day setting up our tents, gathering firewood, and joking around. As night fell, we built a fire by the lake's edge. Shadows danced on the tree trunks, and the crackling of the fire masked the forest sounds. We traded stories, each of us trying to outdo the last with tales of hauntings and close calls with death. But the thrill started to fade when we realized that the surrounding sounds, the chirping, the rustling, had stopped. Then came the whispers. It was faint at first, so soft we thought it was just the breeze. Logan swore he could hear voices calling from the lake, drifting across the water like smoke. But when Jamie walked down to the shore, she found nothing. Just water lapping at her boots and silence hanging thick in the air. The night passed without incident, but we all felt the unease in the air. None of us spoke about it in the morning, but we moved slower, glancing over our shoulders as we prepared breakfast. The first signs. Around midday, Logan noticed something strange. His lighter was gone. It seemed like a minor inconvenience, something he'd misplaced while unpacking. But Logan was meticulous, and he was certain he'd left it by his tent. As we searched, Ryan noticed scratches on the trunk of a nearby tree. They were deep, sharp, and fresh, as if made by claws. "Probably an animal," he said, trying to sound confident. But the rest of us exchanged glances, silently wondering what kind of animal could make marks like that and get so close without us noticing. The whispers returned that night, growing louder as darkness settled in. This time, they seemed to surround us, floating through the trees like distant memories. I strained my ears, trying to make out words, but they dissolved the moment I thought I understood. Logan suggested we ignore them, but it was impossible. Sleep came only in fits, broken by every twig snap and shadow that seemed to creep closer. The lake's secret. By the third day, the whispers were a constant presence, rising and falling like breath. It was then that Jamie found something at the edge of the lake, a small, hand-carved wooden figurine, half buried in the mud. Its face was twisted into a strange expression, as if caught mid-scream. "Who would leave this here?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. We debated whether to leave, but Logan insisted on staying, convinced it was all in our heads. "We were just scaring ourselves," he said. That night, the whispers grew clearer. Ryan shook me awake at around 2 a.m., his face pale and eyes wide. "Listen," he whispered. It was no longer a jumble of sounds. Now, it was a name. Our names. The voices drifted in from the lake, one after the other, each of us hearing our own name in a voice that sounded familiar, yet wrong, like someone we'd known, but could no longer place. First, disappearance. By morning, Logan was missing. We searched the entire campsite and shouted until our voices went hoarse, but there was no sign of him. We found his tent untouched and his belongings arranged as if he'd simply vanished. Panic set in. We considered hiking out to get help, but the narrow path we'd taken was now blocked by fallen trees, and every attempt to leave the campsite seemed to bring us back to the same spot. It was as if the forest wouldn't let us go, shadows in the water. That night, as we sat by the fire, we felt something watching us. I looked across the lake and saw a figure, barely visible, standing at the water's edge on the opposite side. It looked like Logan, but when I called out, the figure melted back into the trees. One by one, shadows emerged from the lake's shore, taking shapes that looked familiar yet wrong. They moved like humans, but with a strange, jerking motion, like puppets on strings. They circled our camp, whispering our names, growing bolder as the firelight dimmed. By dawn, we were desperate. We decided to make a final attempt to leave, but Jamie stumbled upon another figurine near her tent, a likeness of Logan, carved in the same twisted, agonized expression as the one she'd found before. She dropped it with a scream, and we knew, without a word, that we were being hunted. Descent into madness. Days passed, though time began to lose meaning. The whispers followed us constantly, and shadows flitted at the edge of our vision, taunting us, playing with our minds. Ryan disappeared 2 nights later. He'd gone to gather firewood and simply never returned. We found his jacket draped over a branch, as if left there by someone who knew us. It was just Jamie and me now. We clung to each other, taking turns keeping watch, yet sleep came without mercy, slipping into our minds and bringing nightmares that felt all too real. Then came the night when Jamie left. I woke to find her gone. No sign she'd ever been there. Only her flashlight lay on the ground, flickering weakly as if it too was ready to give up. The final confrontation. Alone, I sat by the dying fire, watching as the shadows closed in. The whispers were louder now, clear as day, voices that spoke of regrets, secrets, and betrayals I hadn't thought about in years. They circled me, each one wearing the face of someone I'd known, twisting into Logan, Ryan, Jamie, and finally, myself. I stumbled to the lake's edge, desperate to see if there was anything left of my friends. Instead, I saw my own reflection in the water, a stranger with hollow eyes and a face twisted in terror. Behind me, shadows loomed, their hands reaching for me, fingers cold as the lake's depths. Weeks later, hikers stumbled upon a campfire's remnants and scattered belongings by the lake, but there was no sign of any campers. Only 4 small, hand-carved figurines lay by the water's edge, each one bearing a face frozen in an eternal, silent scream. And at night, if you listen closely, the lake whispers still, calling the names of those who dare to disturb its haunting silence.